In this video, we're going to be looking at Lemonade's marketing spend in detail. Is it good? Is it bad? Is there cause for concern? We'll cover all of this and more, and these are very important questions to answer because I feel Lemonade, they're a stock that either will be wildly successful, potential to do even a 100x return, or completely fail and end in bankruptcy or be acquired for pennies. So really important to try and answer these questions. So in this video, we will cover what is Dave Lee's marketing spend concern. He's talked about marketing spend concern in another video that I covered. What is his concern in detail? What is Lemonade's churn? I haven't really seen this published anywhere, but I did some calculations to figure out what their churn is, customer churn that is. Why are customers churning? We're going to talk about that a little bit. And then what is the bad or good news for Lemonade bulls from all of this? What's kind of my take on it? And what metrics am I going to watch going forward? We're going to cover all these things in this video, so stay tuned. If you get value out of this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. We're looking for multi-bagger stocks that are also what I call in the bag, meaning we have a high degree of conviction in them that they are going to be huge successes over time. Lemonade has huge potential, but also huge potential to fail, so we're not quite sure if it's in the bag, so to speak, but we're still looking at that in detail. Using this kind of approach, my whole investing philosophy sort of evolved over time, but I have been investing since 2009 and have returned about a 30% compound annual growth rate over that time. Wow. As always, nothing on this channel is personal financial advice, but make sure to subscribe and hit the thumbs up if you get value out of this video. First, we're going to play a quick clip of Dave Lee explaining some of his concerns around the marketing spend for Lemonade and their unit economics.
It's a combination. When I interviewed the CFO, he was saying how they can pretty much get back for when they spend money on to acquire a customer. It takes them I think around 2 years or a little more to get back that money. But when I worked out the numbers more recently, it just seems like the marketing spend is. It didn't. I realized I didn't factor in the number of customers that were leaving because the marketing spend was a lot higher than that made sense. But when I added in a certain number of people who are leaving, then the numbers, I'm like, oh, that's why the marketing spend is so much.
So Dave has a problem, and he's saying some of their marketing expenditure spending is not making sense. So let's sort of look at this in a little more detail. The key equation he's talking about, which Tim Bixby, the CFO of Lemonade, has talked about in his interview with Dave, and also in an interview with BARCLAY'S prior to that, and a few other places. He's talking about the long-term value of a customer, kind of what the value is a customer to Lemonade over their whole lifespan, kind of approximating what that long-term value is. That's roughly equal to the in-force premium that the customer brings. So the amount of premium that they are paying on a given year, say it's $60 for the year, $5 a month as a renter insurance, say they're just a renter, that's $60 is their in-force premium. That means the long-term value of that customer might be roughly equal to $60. They're sort of approximating. And that sort of equals out to about 2 to 2.5 times, somewhere in there, roughly in there, their cost of acquiring the customer, or customer acquisition cost. So roughly 2 to 2.5 times what they're spending for the customer, they should be getting an in-force premium from that customer. And this is roughly, also they say it's roughly equal to a 2-year payback on this customer acquisition cost, roughly. Obviously, there's a lot of variance in all of these numbers, but roughly again. And so, for example, if they were to spend $200 to acquire a customer, but they got $400, 2 times that, of in-force premium, then at a 25% margin, that would take about 2 years to pay off. So that kind of makes sense, and that's sort of the flow of the unit economics they're suggesting. But this equation is not making sense, and the numbers are really not adding up, because if you put this into a spreadsheet, which I've done, and you look on a quarterly basis here, and you look at the sales and marketing spend on a quarterly basis, and you look at the in-force premium on a quarterly at the end of each quarter, and then you look at how much in-force premium is gained over each quarter, and then you take a ratio of the amount of in-force premium you're gaining to the amount of sales and marketing you're spending, you get a value like this that's ranging from, below 1 to, at the highest, kind of 1.5 to 1.3, low ones. And this number should be higher than 2 to 2.5 if these numbers were adding up. But clearly, something's not making sense here. Something is not adding up. So there's some kind of issue going on. And Dave's theory was that it could be that this equation, this long-term value to in-force premium, 2 to 2.5, is that they're not including churn customers and their effect. Dave kind of talked about this in his video with Emmett, and then he was also messaging me on Twitter and kind of explaining that he thinks they're not including the churn value, churn customers that fall away or do not renew their insurance with them into this equation. So what I did is I dug into some of these numbers more and used the annual dollar retention value that Lemonade publishes to calculate how much churn is happening, how many customers actually are dropping off on a quarterly basis, because this is not something Lemonade publishes, but I think there's a way we could calculate it. So Lemonade defines the annual dollar retention, ADR, as a percentage of in-force premium retained over a 12-month period, inclusive of changes in policy value, changes in number of policies, changes in policy type, and churn, this customer churn that we're looking at. So for their annual dollar retention, Lemonade essentially is looking at all the customers at a certain point in time and all the premium those customers are bringing in. And then 12 months later, how many of those customers are remaining and how much in-force premium those customers have, and then taking the percent of how much dollar per dollar was retained kind of between the $2 amounts. So in there's the churn, there's also the amount of premium per customer that's sort of changing over time. You take those things together, that's sort of, you get this ratio of the annual dollar retention. And so I'm gonna whiz through the math here really quickly. Just stick with me here if you're not a math person, but feel free to check my math if you are a math person. So ADR I'm defining as the annual dollar retention. AC I'm going to call active customers. The PPC, premium per customer, I'm going to just denote number 2 is the end of the ADR period, so a 12-month period, and number 1 as the start of the ADR period. When you think about it then, the customers at the end is going to be equal to the customers at the beginning minus however many customers churn out. Or in other words, you could say the churn that we're looking for is going to be the customers at the start minus the customers at the end. Whatever's left, whatever that difference is how many customers churned away. Then you can also think about their definition of ADR, and you can write out this equation that says essentially the customers, it's going to be 1 minus the customers at the start multiplied by the premium per customer at the start. Subtract out of that the customers at the end who are still active of that same group, and the customers and the premium per customer that those customers at the end are paying, divided by the customers at the start times by the premium per customer at the start. You get that gives you a factor of 1 minus that would give you how much is being retained at the end of the period. You do some math simplifying this, and you also knowing your churn, you can then solve for the active customers at the end relative to everything else, and then substituting that into the equation for churn will give you your equation for churn as this. And of course, I then took this equation along with a bunch of other data, put it all into a spreadsheet, which I will now show you and walk through with you. So here is my spreadsheet of math, including churn math, which we'll get to in a moment. I will link this spreadsheet down below in the description of the video, so feel free to check it out yourself and look at some of these values yourself. So we have sales and marketing, we have the customer total, this is expenditure per quarter, the net customer gain per quarter, this is your customer acquisition on a net customer basis. So that gives you that. It ranges from 260 to 390 is a high point. 300 though, kind of more typical, or in the 200s per customer. You are gaining, net customer gaining versus their sales and marketing expenditure overall. Of course, this does not include organic growth of the customers. This is only the net customer change. And then you have in-force premium total and in-force premium gain. We will talk about this in a little bit in a moment here, but in-force premium gain for private sales and marketing expenditure, that kind of ratio, how much you're gaining for how much you're spending. And then we get into the churn here, which we're looking at right now is your annual dollar retention. We're talking about your premium per customer average. Your churn annual is calculated right here. So this is where we get into that calculation I just showed you. Your churn annual, if you're looking at, this is from a year prior to now. So we're kind of, if you look back, it's like you're looking at the end, Q3, end of Q3 2020, you had 941,000 customers, and now at the end of Q3 2021, you have 1.3, 6 million customers, but you actually churn 330,000 of those customers, like a pretty large amount, and the churn percentage is about 35%. If you look on that sort of the year prior that this ADR would be based on to what that is, you get about 35%. And then I took this wouldn't be exactly correct, but I took a quarterly churn, so kind of on a rough quarterly basis, just this 330 and so on, churn on a year prior basis, into a quarter. What kind of that would be quarterly, just divided by 4, that value, and then you kind of get into some interesting stuff here too. You can get your customer acquisition cost with churn included. So if you think about all the customers, in this quarter they had 82,000 customers churn, and they gained about. Net customer gain was 158,000. So they had 158,000 plus probably, roughly 80 some thousand customers that churned to actually get a net customer gain of, this 158. They actually gained the combined total of both those values. So if you use that combined total of both those values, then you get your customer acquisition costs with churn are actually significantly lower, and more, like 175 kind of over the last 3 quarters have been pretty consistent right in that range. And then you have a churn quarter based relative to the total, or churn per quarter relative to the total. So you get kind of 5-6% there. And then this gets interesting because I wanted to get back to that equation that the in-force long-term value is equal to the in-force premium, which is equal to roughly 2 to 2.5 times the cost of acquisition. So I put in, how much in-force premium are you gaining if you consider that you are the customers that are churning. So there's a lot of detail there, so make sure to listen carefully to this. But if you do that math of how much you're gaining if you include the customers you are churning, then you have about 71 million gain, or 64 million gain, 53 million gain versus 71 million this last quarter versus the change of in-force premium was more like 50. This is reality of what happened because these customers churn, but this value here, the 71 million, kind of pretends all the churn customers, there was 0 customer churn, all the churn customers stuck around, and how much would you actually be gaining then? And it's more like 71 million then versus your 50, so it's significantly higher. Then if you take this in-force premium gained with the churn, divide that by your sales and marketing, then, back around the time that Dave did the interview with Tim and prior, would have been, I'm not sure what the numbers would have been prior to, even if you're looking back further, but you had around that 2 ratio. Now, since then, the ratio has gone down, 1.5, 1.8, 1.9, 1.6, 1.7 kind of range. So it's not too far off of that 2. Also, of course, the long-term value and the in-force premium they're gaining could be slightly different depending on those might not be exactly equal. So there's lots of, a little bit of room for error in all of these. But the interesting, I think that kind of gets us to a place, kind of self-checks that the customer churn values are making sense, where you're actually churning, on an annualized basis every 12 months. About a third or so, 35% or so of the company of customers are churning, which is a significant amount of customers. Definitely a little bit alarming when you see that figure. So this is bad news that they do have a lot of customer churn going on. Do you think there's some reasons for this churn? And I talked about this in a prior video, is that number one, they don't have all their products in all their places. So they're depending on what state you're in, which country you're in. You might only have a part of their entire product lineup available. And of course, some of their new products like LMND Car and their Metro Mile acquisitions coming on online next year is a key, insurance piece. Your auto insurance bundled, say, with your home insurance, that could make a huge difference in how people are retained, because if they only can have part of their insurance, maybe people are switching to go with another insurance provider who can bundle all of the insurance products they need. So just having more products available in every place that they are, I think, is going to increase that customer retention or lower that amount of churn that they're seeing. Also, I think a really big one is because they offer more, I would call more low-end insurance products or niche sort of insurance products, things like renter's insurance. They even have things like e-bike insurance available some places. Those sort of niche products are going to naturally attract people that have a higher churn. So they might still love having LMND, everything about LMND, but because they're moving, they went to college and they were living in one apartment or house or something they're renting, and they got renter's insurance, but now maybe they move back home to their parents' house, a young person, then they're going to cancel their renter's insurance and naturally churn. But that person, as long as they had a good experience with LMND, next time they need insurance, they're going to go back to LMND. And so they're not really like a negative churn in that way. In fact, Tim Bixby talks about this exact sort of reasoning in this Barclays interview that I mentioned earlier. So we're going to just listen to him.
So we think of churn in a couple different ways. So the traditional view of churn is bad. You lose a customer you invested money in getting, and therefore that number needs to be as small as possible. We have that, but it's the least common reason for our churn. We ask everyone who leaves or about to leave, what's driving it. We get pretty good response rates. The least likely is I'm not happy with your product, or I found a better product, or I found a cheaper product. It happens in every business, but that's the least common. The most common are structural and logistical reasons, because again, the vast majority of our customer base are a little younger, a little more transient, and their lives are changing quite a bit. They move in with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, they move home with their parents. They, pre-pandemic, they traveled Europe for 6 months, and they tell us, and when they leave, they say, your product's great. I love LMND. Can't wait to be a customer again. I don't need insurance at this point in time. And so something like, greater than 50% of these customers that churn, we expect to be able to earn their business back at the right time when they need it. That's kind of how we balance it. The other is that as customers age, by definition, their churn rates decline, their retention rates increase. A second-year renter has lower churn than a first-year. A first-year homeowner has lower churn than a second-year renter. A second-year homeowner, and so on and so on. And so when you look at Progressive or Geico or large incumbents that we compete with, the bulk of their business, the bulk of their customer base are multi-year homeowner customers. And so they see churn rates of 90% plus. We see the same thing, but the portion of our business that is represented by that is very small. And over time, that'll shift and the rates will follow.
What's encouraging from this clip for me is that he says the reasons for the customer churn is not because customers are dissatisfied, but is because they're leaving for these other reasons that we talked about, such as product availability or changes in their life. But otherwise, he said for the majority, people are very satisfied with LMND and with the customer experience. And now for a bit of good news. Good news is when you think about the number of customers that are churning, LMND actually is acquiring customers, on a per customer basis, actually, at a very low rate, or a relatively inexpensive rate. So that's some good news, some positive news there. Also good news is that the in-force premium that they are gaining per sort of the sales and marketing dollar that they spend is increasing over time. So in this column, in-force premium gain by sales and marketing spent shows you they were below $1 and now it's increasing to, above $1, $1.34, $1.36, $1.18 last few quarters. And so overall, I've charted this out. It is trending upwards over time. And if you look at it, in-force premium gain with churn, there's less quarters of data, but it's a little more even. It's just this last sort of section here you're looking at. It looks similar to that. And I would expect this in-force premium gained, this in-force premium you're gaining for sales and marketing expenditure, this ratio to really, rise over time, because customers essentially, as bigger ticket products like your auto insurance is available more places, then existing customers can greatly increase their own existing in-force premium. And new customers can also, that you're buying or paying for or marketing to get, can also be offered or have a lot more in-force premium. And I would expect this in-force premium gain for sales and marketing expenditure to really rise over time, essentially as bigger ticket insurance product items, especially auto insurance, becomes available in all the places they want it available, more and more places, then existing customers either are able to buy much, greatly increase the amount of in-force premium they might have previously had for, without spending any more on the sales and marketing front. So I really expect this number to greatly rise over time. Finally, I want to talk about what advertising metrics am I watching for Lemonade, or what kind of questions am I evaluating them by going forward. For the first one is churn as a percentage of total customers declining over time as they attract and retain more mature, higher in-force premium customers. So as better, bigger products, higher ticket IFP products come online in more places, those sort of people that are buying them should be less likely to churn just based on their status in life. You have to also keep in mind, though, as they expand their lower in-force premium products, like renters insurance, into new geographies, say they're expanding into Europe and they just offer renters there, churn could increase and premium customer could actually decrease temporarily, because more customers that are higher churn in those places could be added into the fold. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. Other metric to watch is in-force premium gained, and in-force premium gained per sales and marketing expenditure should rapidly rise as new products come online and in more places. Is it? So that's something really to watch. That should have a huge jump over the next year and beyond. Another metric is the annual dollar retention. It should stay high and or move higher as higher value IFP products and bundles become normal for customers. Is that happening as well? Something to watch there. And then finally, watch the customer acquisition cost when accounting for churn, or without churn. You could look at it either way. Over time, is because more organic growth could decrease your customer acquisition costs, but also as they reach out into more competitive and higher in-force premium product categories, this customer acquisition cost could also increase, because now you're competing against other people that want a customer for auto insurance is a much bigger ticket item than you're trying to compete for someone who wants to buy renter's insurance. So that would naturally have a higher sales and marketing cost to attain one of those customers. So those are the metrics I will be watching. What do you think? I'd love to hear from you. Are you concerned by Lemonade's marketing spend and unit economics so far? Personally, I'm a bit more concerned about the probability of success for Lemonade, but especially when you think about how many customers are churning, but I still think we need several more quarters of growth and data before we can know with more certainty the success or failure of Lemonade. I'm going to be modeling when they might become profitable, or trying to do that based on various unit economics, some what we broke down in this video. But make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that future video. I'll also link this spreadsheet down below in the description if you want to take a look and provide any feedback. You can find me on Twitter at PaperBagInvest. And thank you so much for watching. And remember, it's in the bag.